There comes a moment in life when understanding is no longer enough. You have already understood too much, reflected too much, analyzed too much, and even so, something remains the same. Not because of a lack of ability, but because the game does not turn in reflection. It turns in an internal decision. While you consider, evaluate, think it over, or wait to feel more secure, the same cycle keeps running. Life does not respond to incomplete intention. It responds to the internal position you assume. Turning the game around is not an external event. It is a change of state. And that change can begin today, not when everything is clear, not when everything is resolved, but when you decide to stop sustaining the same internal place. Sachar 1, internal decision ends cycles, awareness as the turning point. Nothing changes while you are only considering. Considering keeps everything open. Considering keeps the old active. It's like leaving a door half open for the past to keep coming in. The turnaround begins when you decide to stop sustaining the old state. Decision is not a promise. It is not motivation. It is internal closure. Think of someone who has been saying for years that they are going to change. They think, talk, plan, but they always keep a justification stored away, a reason why it's still not the moment. Meanwhile, the same cycle keeps repeating. It's not a lack of strength, it's a lack of closure. A clear decision repositions your vibration immediately, even before any external action. Something changes in the body. The internal dialogue changes. Energy stops leaking into the past. Deciding is stopping mentally feeding what you say you want to leave behind. When the decision is real, it does not come with anxiety. It comes with silence. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to convince anyone. You simply stop sustaining the old state. And the field responds quickly to this, because there is finally a defined position. 2. Direct the mind once. Focus without dispersion. After the decision, there is a second essential movement. Stop looking at the old scoreboard. You cannot turn the game around while you keep checking the result of the previous game. Changing the game requires stopping looking at the past as a reference. Think of someone who decided to change phases but keeps mentally revisiting everything that went wrong before. Each memory reactivates the old state. Each comparison pulls them back. The mind becomes divided. Divided focus does not create a new reality. It creates repetition. Directing the mind is not thinking about the future all the time. It is stopping emotionally returning to the past. It is choosing a new axis and staying there. Choose a new axis and remain. This simplifies everything. The mind stops dispersing. Decisions become more obvious. Excess options fall away. Internal noise decreases. Continuous focus does not exhaust. What exhausts is returning to the same point over and over again. There is something important here. Every time you choose to remain in content, that repositions you. Listen until the end, reflect calmly. You are training exactly this. Single direction. Liking this video is not an external gesture. It is an internal gesture of focus. It is telling your mind, I stop looking at the old game now. And if you feel that you need this kind of constant direction so you don't get lost again, subscribing to the channel is not following someone. It is creating a fixed point to return to when the mind tries to pull you back into dispersion. Turning the game around begins when focus stops oscillating. 3. Assume the feeling of the next level. Active creative force. This is the longest topic in the entire process for a simple reason. This is where almost everyone fails, even after deciding, focusing, and trying to act. Without this adjustment, everything that came before slips through your fingers again. Decision defines direction. Focus maintains the path, but it is feeling that gives life to reality. And we are not talking about excitement, euphoria, or fleeting enthusiasm. These feelings rise fast and fall even faster. We are talking about a stable feeling, the one you can sustain on an ordinary day when nothing extraordinary is happening. Do not wait for the result to feel different. The feeling opens the door before the fact. Here is the classic trap. The person says, when my life improves, I will feel confident. When the money comes in, I will relax. When it works out, I will change. This sounds logical, but it keeps everything stuck. The field understands waiting, and waiting does not create movement. Think of someone who lives like this. They wake up waiting for external proof to finally feel safe. Meanwhile, they react to small things with fear, haste, and doubt. Every obstacle becomes confirmation that they haven't arrived yet. The body lives on alert. The mind lives in the future. The field reads this state as, it's not time yet. Now observe the opposite. Think of someone who begins to feel stability before everything is resolved. Not arrogance, not denial of reality. Stability. They don't know exactly how everything will organize itself, but they feel something different inside. I can handle it. The body relaxes. Breathing deepens. Haste decreases. Externally, almost nothing has changed. Internally, everything has changed. This feeling changes everything because it alters how you respond to life. You no longer react from urgency. You no longer decide from fear. You no longer speak from insecurity. And these small changes in response create enormous effects over time. Assuming the feeling of the next level is not pretending that everything is fine, it is internally rehearsing the state you want to sustain when everything improves. It is observing how someone more centered would handle the same situation and beginning to respond from that place now. For example, how would someone more stable react to a delay? How would someone more secure speak in a difficult conversation? How would someone more confident make a simple decision? You begin to respond like that version, even without all the external proof. Not because you are deceiving yourself, but because you are training the state. And that is exactly why this topic needs to be longer. Because feeling does not change with a beautiful sentence. It changes with conscious repetition, with attention, with small returns to the chosen state throughout the day. When you feel now what you once thought would only come later, you anticipate the result. Not by magic, but because you begin to act, decide, and perceive from a different internal place. The universe does not respond to the goal you project, it responds to the state you sustain. And here is the most liberating part. This adjustment does not require emotional effort. You don't need to feel strong. You don't need to get excited. You just need to notice when you have returned to automatic fear and gently return to the chosen state of stability. Without fighting, without self-pressure, without dramatizing. It is like turning the steering wheel a few degrees when you realize you drifted off the road. Small adjustment, big difference in the path. This is how the game begins to turn from the inside out. Not when everything changes outside, but when you begin to sustain internally the feeling of the next level as your reference. And when that happens, everything that follows flows with much less resistance. 4. Alignment is stopping negotiation with the past. Internal coherence. After the decision, the focus, and the assumed feeling, there is a silent adjustment that determines whether the game truly turns or everything returns to the old pattern. Stop negotiating with the past. Negotiating with the past is continuing to explain why something didn't work. It is justifying old limitations. It is repeating stories that have already fulfilled their role, but continue to be used as references. While you explain, you keep it alive. Aligning is no longer explaining why it didn't work. Think of someone who decided to change their life, but every time something new appears, feels the need to explain their history. They explain why they couldn't before. They explain why now it might be difficult. They explain to others and to themselves. The past continues to occupy space. Real alignment begins when you stop using the past as an argument. This is not denying what happened. It is not allowing it to keep deciding. When you align, something changes in your internal silence. You no longer argue with yourself. You don't try to convince yourself. You don't enter mental debate. Internal silence strengthens the new choice. This silence is not emptiness. It is firmness. It is when you no longer feel the need to prove that you are right to change. You simply change. And this absence of justification is felt by the field. The universe responds better to those who do not negotiate. It responds to those who assume. When you stop explaining the past, the present gains strength. And when the present gains strength, The future begins to organize itself with more fluidity. 5. Minimal but exact action. Inspired movement. Here is a common mistake, believing that turning the game around requires an avalanche of actions. Changing everything at once? Doing too much? Overloading yourself? This rarely works. Turning the game around does not require doing everything. It requires doing the right step. Aligned action is born simple, almost obvious. It does not come with anxiety or internal pressure. It arises as a natural continuation of the state you have already assumed. One correct step is worth more than excessive effort. Think of someone who tries to change their entire life at once. They start multiple projects, take on many responsibilities, pressure themselves intensely. The result is usually exhaustion and giving up. Now think of someone who, after deciding and aligning, takes a single clear step, a specific adjustment, a necessary conversation, a practical choice that was being avoided. That step, although small, shifts the entire axis. The exact action does not weigh you down. It organizes you. You know it is the right action because the body does not resist. There may be mild fear, but there is no confusion. There is no sense of forcing yourself. There is clarity. Aligned action does not ask for exaggerated courage. It asks for honesty. When you take the right step, other actions begin to reveal themselves naturally. Not because you planned everything, but because you are now in the right place to perceive them. 6. Allow the new format, real openness to receiving. Turning the game around rarely keeps everything the same. This is a point many people ignore. The new state usually brings new formats, new routines, new people, new priorities. Resisting change blocks the process. Many people decide to change, but want everything around them to remain comfortable. They want a new result without altering the old structure. This creates conflict. Allowing the new format is accepting that something will change in how you live. Think of someone who wants a more balanced life, but keeps saying yes to everything. Wants to prosper, but maintains habits that drain energy. Wants peace, but doesn't change the rhythm. The desire exists, but the permission does not. Receiving requires internal flexibility. When you allow the new format, you don't control every detail, you adapt, adjust, learn, and this movement communicates openness. The universe responds better to flexibility than to rigidity. Allowing is not losing control. It is stopping resistance. When you accept that turning the game changes scenarios, something relaxes inside. And when the body relaxes, receiving happens more naturally. 7. Sustain the state for 24 hours. Vibrational stability. Here is the simplest and at the same time, most powerful point of the entire process. Sustain the state for 24 hours. Not forever, not for your whole life, just one full day. Real transformations do not begin with big promises. They begin with short periods sustained with awareness. One day in the new state creates momentum. Many people miss the turnaround because they try to sustain everything at once. They want to never doubt again, never fall again, never feel fear again. This creates pressure and ends up leading back to the old pattern. The game does not turn like this. What turns the game is not canceling the decision for 24 hours. During this period, you don't need to do anything extraordinary. You just need to observe when the old state tries to return and choose not to enter it. Not argue with fear, not feed justification, not over-explain. It's like holding a door closed for an entire day. At first, it feels strange. Then, something stabilizes. Think of someone who decides to spend an entire day without complaining. At first, they notice how much they complained without realizing it. After a few hours apart, something changes. The mind slows down. The body relaxes. The day feels different. Not because the problems disappeared, but because the state changed. The same happens here. Sustaining the state for 24 hours creates a new internal reference. The body begins to recognize that place as possible. The mind begins to accept that position as valid, and this creates momentum. Repeating consolidates the turnaround. When you sustain it today, tomorrow becomes easier. Not because it becomes automatic, but because the body already knows the path. And everything that is known stops being frightening. Turning the game around does not require understanding everything. It requires not immediately going back. This is the secret that almost no one applies because it seems too simple. But it is exactly this simplicity that makes the process powerful. You do not need to solve your entire life right now. You do not need total clarity. You do not need to know all the next steps. You need to begin today. The game turns when the state changes. And the state changes when you decide, focus, feel, align, act with precision, allow the new, and sustain it for a short period. Everything starts inside, and when it starts inside, the external has no choice but to follow. If something here made you breathe differently, think differently, or feel a kind of silent firmness, don't ignore it. That is internal recognition. And recognition is the first sign of a real turnaround. You are not late. You are at the point of decision. And the most powerful process to turn the game of your life around does not start tomorrow. It starts today.